I'm Chris Hepburn. I'm from OnlySP, and I'm here at EGLX, and I'm joined by Cameron from Muse Games, the company that's bringing you the Kung Fu Hamster Pim with the game Hamsterdam.
That's right.
Yes. So, how did the inception of Hamsterdam come? Because, was it really Hamtaro that inspired you?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, we're the company that made Guns of Icarus Online, if you're familiar with that game. It's like a steampunk airship, post-apocalypse combat game, and the main artistic direction is dirt and bullets. And we were just, honestly, we've been working on that game for so long, we were we need just a creative outlet, right? Yeah. So we actually made Hamsterdam as an internal just pet project, right? About a cute little hamster who rides a scooter and beats up rodents. But, totally different artistic direction, and it was just to keep our creative juices flowing and look at something different every now and again. And after we finished up Guns of Icarus, we took a second look at it and we were like, oh crap, this game is super fun. We could polish this up and we could release this, and it's really quality. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're putting on the final stages of our Switch edition of the game, making sure all the controls are up and working, and doing final tweaks on all those sorts of things.
Now, it's supposed to have native controls between mobile, tablet, PC, I believe, and Switch, right?
Yes.
So how did you guys come up with that? Because I know on the Switch you could play with touchscreen, you could play with the button prompts, or you could just shake the controllers. And it's honestly really responsive and fun shaking the controllers.
Oh yeah.
I was shocked. It was really cool.
Yeah, so one of the things in regards to that is, like I mentioned, it was a pet project we were making Guns of Icarus. We actually started Hamsterdam before the Switch was even announced. Okay. And our internal development mantra was always the power of a console brawler in your pocket. Oh. And then the Switch was Nintendo's oh, this is our new console. It's the power of a console in your pocket. And we were oh my god. We made a Switch game before there was a Switch. So we bugged Nintendo forever for our dev kits, and then we finally got them. Okay. So because the game was designed around just mobile, exclusively mobile with the tap and swipe, we found that translates actually much better to motion controls than buttons that were, or games that were built around button inputs. Okay. So yeah, we call it gestural because it's a gesture on the touchscreen. It's also a gesture just with your hands, and that translates much better than
left, move left.
Yeah, rather than waggle as opposed to a button input. Yeah. So we really did find that it felt really good. You played it, and it really does. It communicates itself really well, and it actually is immersive as opposed to, I just kind of whip my arm around. And
yeah, because you actually have to when the enemy's coming at you and they flash white, you have to flick your wrist towards them.
Yes.
So your character's actually coming over, grabbing them, and whipping them on the ground. It's my turn. Then you shake the other fist, and you're I'm doing my combo.
Yeah. So that idea actually came from the way that it was played, but people were playing it on mobile, where they used their left hand to swipe, but because the enemies are on the left side of the screen, they used their left hand to swipe, and they used their right hand to tap to punch. So we just took that exact thing and we moved it to the Joy-Cons instead. So you use your left hand to swipe and your right hand to punch.
Just human nature created the whole mechanic. Right?
Exactly.
It's really interesting.
It's actually super fun to play on Switch, at least for me. I don't know about you, but when I play tested it for the first time, I really I could feel my left and my right brain working against each other as I was trying to basically pat my head and rub my stomach by trying to punch and swipe around.
And then there's those super counters where you have to move both hands. Oh wait, I gotta incorporate both again.
Yeah. So it's constantly moving around the way that you interact with the game.
Okay. All right. So what's the story behind Pim fighting all these rodents, and why is he fighting in the first place?
So it actually turns out that Pim was just learning Hamster Kung Fu from his grandfather, just as a bonding experience. Okay. Passing down Hamster Kung Fu through generations. But Pim was never really interested in learning Kung Fu. He just wanted to ride a scooter all the time.
Okay.
But stuff really hit the wall when Marlo and his gang of evil vermin come in, and they take over Hamsterdam, they kidnap Grandpa, and they get all the residents addicted to the malicious Marlo tonic.
Okay.
So Pim was the only one who was able to escape. So now he has to desperately try to remember what his grandfather taught him, locate Marlo's secret lair, rescue his grandfather, and liberate the residents of Hamsterdam.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting then. So how long is this game looking to be, approximately from start to finish of rescuing the grandfather?
So there are 30 levels in the game.
Okay.
And so that includes mini bosses and bosses, and there's some additional bonus levels on top of that as well.
Awesome.
So all the mini bosses and bosses play differently than the standard mechanic, the standard fighting that you played, where it's actually oftentimes a behind Pim view, and you're doing things like dodging bombs and throwing your hamster allies, and dodging fists directly and whatnot. So it's that good solid pace breaker in the standard experience. Well, the bonus levels play different than that even. It plays sort of more like a side-scroller infinite runner where you actually get to ride your scooter and collect seeds.
Cool, and he does like riding a scooter, so that's a great
He sure
addition. Does he get to use the scooter as a weapon at all?
So there's no bashing mice over the head with your scooter, but at the beginning of every level, you do see him riding it on the streets, and then he hops off when he gets jumped by the vermin gang.
Okay, cool. So what were some games you guys looked at for inspiration outside of it, like maybe Punch-Out for like the behind the view for like the fight? What are some inspirations?
So one of the biggest inspirations of the way we wanted to handle a PvE combat was like the Batman Arkham series, where you're doing things like you're hitting the counters at the right time and keeping the punch. And there's actually there's a rhythm mechanic to it as well, where you can actually do perfect attacks. Where if you time your punches just right, you'll actually do more damage and build your KO meter faster. So it's that we sort of took a rhythm element from there, not rhythm to the music, but rhythm to like a good fight.
Yeah.
And then you did mention Punch-Out, and there actually are, if you pay close attention, on most of our bosses, they telegraph their attacks even earlier than usual with some specific tells that are inspired by some of our favorite Punch-Out fights.
Oh, that's awesome. So you mentioned this KO meter. What is that?
So as you attack enemies, the KO meter at the bottom slowly builds, and the better you fight, the faster it'll build. And then once it's completely full, you drag it and you drop it on top of an enemy to do a one-hit super punch.
Does that work on all of them, or is there like some big beefy dude that's like, ha ha ha, I'm too strong for you?
Yeah, so the bunny bouncers and as you get later, even basic enemies will start wearing armor. So the knockout punch will take out a huge chunk of their health, but it won't completely finish them off.
Okay, well that's still pretty interesting. Cool. So how did you guys come up with like the whole graphical style? Because it comes out, even though it's like a Kung Fu thing, it's like family friendly. Was that something you guys wanted to do like from the get-go, was like this family friendly thing?
We definitely wanted to appeal to as a wide audience as possible, because like I mentioned, initially we were on mobile and tablet development, and we know a lot of kids use those. However, we didn't want to just make a kids game. Sort of similar to the sort of cartoony style of perhaps Overwatch or even Fortnite, where it's cartoony enough to apply to kids, but it's
got the depth for adults.
It's got the depth for adults, yeah.
Awesome.
It supports, we actually moved that same design principle to the gameplay as well, where you can get through a lot of the earlier levels just by tapping on the screen randomly and like waving your hands all over the place. And you'll be able to skirt through them, but once you get to the more advanced levels, you really do need a more in-depth knowledge of the game in order to actually finish. So you can definitely sit a kid down in front of the tablet and you can get through a few levels no problem and feel like a superhero, but also for the more experienced gamer, maybe you got your Switch on your way to work or whatever, you can still get an in-depth, engaging, enriching experience.
That's cool. It'd be funny to see someone on the subway just like flicking their wrist around doing Hamster Kung Fu in the subway. They're just in a, no.
No!
I can't wait to see that one day. So the game has a lot of bonus levels and a lot of levels to go. Is there any like customization that you can get out of it, or is there any extras to go along with it?
Oh, absolutely. As you move through the game, you unlock different costume pieces. So everything from like funny little apple on the head, or like boxing glove sorts of things, to some elements like like even oven mitts, and or there's even some costumes. Some of our Kickstarter goals that were reached that were inspired by some older Kung Fu movies. So we have costumes that make you look like the bride in Kill Bill, or even Avatar Korra is inspired on one of them, or Bruce Lee, and even Ryu from Street Fighter. Cameraman is going nuts. He loves that.
Yes.
So yeah, there's all sorts of inspiration that we've sort of referenced in the different clothes that you can unlock and play as. And furthermore, they're not purely aesthetic. They can also increase certain stats or give you certain abilities. It's not always positive, however. There are some specific pieces of gear that you can put on that make the game even more difficult. So if you're finding
extra level.
Yeah, if you find yourself plowing through levels and it's too easy, you can sort of have a new game plus, if you will, by putting on the iron gloves and the busted headgear and the steampunk goggles and all that stuff that make it so you have less time to react to attacks, and attacks do more damage, and health drops do less, and all those sorts of things that can really up the experience if you're finding it's too easy.
Add some of those really nice modifiers. Just really gives the player agency over their play experience, which is nice. I always enjoy those.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
You can play however you want to play.
Yeah. So you said it was on Kickstarter. Do you want to talk about like how the Kickstarter campaign went for you guys?
Yeah. So we just finished our Kickstarter campaign recently, and we were nearly 200% funded.
Ooh, that's impressive.
So yeah, we're really excited about that. But we even had people who were like, "Hey, I just missed the Kickstarter, but like I still want to give you money somehow. Is that possible?" And we were like, Yes, you can always give us money. So we opened up an Indiegogo, and that's still going right now, actually.
Okay.
So the links to that are on all of our social media, or you can just look up Hamsterdam on Indiegogo. And so you can support us there, and you can get copies for all versions of the game, so the Switch, Android, iOS, from there at a slightly discounted price.
Awesome. I'll have a link in the description, so be sure to look there and on the article. All right, so my cameraman even has a question. What about difficulty levels? Will there be like an easy, medium, or hard, or is it just kind of down to the equipment?
So actually, we found that like at the very beginning of the game, asking how difficult you want it is kind of counterintuitive, because you're like, I don't know how hard, I don't know how good I am at this game. Maybe I suck and I want it easy, or maybe I'm great and I want it hard. So you adjust the difficulty just based on your equipment, like I mentioned. So some equipment make the game easier, and some make it harder. So it's really a play as you go, and maybe you find some elements of the game easy and some other elements hard. So you can put on equipment that make the hard elements easy and the easy elements harder. So it's really a more customizable approach to difficulty than right at the beginning sort of blindly choosing.
Okay, that sounds cool. Now I got a tough question for you, and I think I know the answer to this one. Are we going to see a PlayStation port eventually with the PlayStation Move controllers? I assume there's no VR, but like,
so maybe? We actually do have a PS Vita version of the game coming out, which is a pretty big surprise to a lot of people. But we found once again the touch controls work really well on that. We've got the button inputs as well, and we really think that the Vita needs just a little bit of love.
I agree. It's a phenomenal system. Not enough love.
Yeah. So we're giving it a little Hamsterdam love.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, when will the game be releasing?
So we're shooting for a late this year, early next year release date. We don't want to quite hard lock in yet, because we want to make sure the game is complete before we finish it. We don't want to be like, well, it's Tuesday, time to ship. We really want to make sure that the game is 100% complete, as bug-free as possible, and just the right experience the first time you play.
Okay. Well, after this experience with making Hamsterdam and your previous experience with Guns of Icarus, where do you see the company going after this? Do you want to go back to like the grungy, steampunky stuff, or do you want to keep with like this family stuff going on?
So Guns of Icarus, or rather Muse Games, has always been focused around like community and making games that are fun to play together. So Hamsterdam is the more family-oriented game that both you and your kids can play and get different experiences out of. Guns of Icarus was all about cooperation and competition, and we found that that's sort of our niche. We really like community-based games. So as we're moving forward, we do actually have a couple more projects in the works. Some co-op games. Maybe something a little bit on the scarier side, and perhaps something for the more nature lovers in us.
Very nice.
That's about all I can give away, but there are more Muse games in the works that will be announced soon enough.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to hear. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so I'd like to say thank you very much for coming out and talking to us.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, man.
It's been great. And this has been Cameron with Muse Games. Be sure to check out Hamsterdam, coming up soon.